Harmony's command center hummed with tense activity as Captain Zixel's skin shifted to a deep purple of concern. Three-dimensional projections of the unidentified vessel rotated above the central console, highlighting its strange, inefficient design. Analysis complete. Captain, reported Science Officer Thorell, her delicate fingers dancing across holographic displays. The vessel employs primitive fusion propulsion, basic electromagnetic shielding, and what appears to be projectile-based weapon systems. Technology classification, pre-council, development stage 3. Zixel's inner eyelids flicked thoughtfully. And yet they've achieved interstellar travel. Curious. The council's governing eye, a crystalline structure pulsing with blue light from a pedestal beside the captain's chair, spoke in its measured tones. Threat assessment indicates 82.7% probability of hostile intent. Historical precedent suggests immediate neutralization of pre-council species, demonstrating unexpected technological leaps. We follow protocol, Zixel decided, mandibles clicking with reluctance. One final communication attempt, then containment procedures. Aboard the Pathfinder, Commander Chen unbuckled from her acceleration chair as their ship stabilized. The journey through the experimental wormhole had been rougher than simulations predicted, but they'd made it, humanity's first venture beyond their solar system. Status report, she ordered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Dr. Williams monitored his array of biological sensors. Atmosphere integrity holding. No detectable pathogens or radiation spikes. His eyes widened suddenly. Sarah, I'm picking up artificial signals, strong ones, and they're directed at us. Engineer Patel looked up from his diagnostic panel, dark eyes bright with excitement. Something massive just dropped out of faster-than-light travel 3 kilometers off our port side. The energy signature is, it's unlike anything in our theoretical models. On screen, Chen commanded, her heart racing despite years of training for this moment. The view screen activated, revealing a vessel that defied human engineering principles, asymmetrical and seemingly impossible, with sections that appeared to phase in and out of visibility. That's not natural, whispered the tactical officer, hands hovering over controls he never truly expected to use. Those are weapons ports along its ventral surface. Chen straightened her uniform, a calm settling over her despite the gravity of the moment. Open all communication channels, standard greeting package as planned. The transmission sent carefully crafted messages of peace in mathematics, simple hydrogen atom diagrams, and basic linguistic structures developed by Earth's foremost xenolinguists. But the alien vessel remained silent. Instead, their sensors detected energy building within the strange ship's external arrays. They're scanning us, Paddle reported. Intense radiation suites. Wait, they're penetrating our hull shielding somehow. Williams frowned at his readings. Our communications might be too primitive or fundamentally incompatible with their systems. The ship shuddered suddenly, warning lights flashing across every console. Energy weapon discharge detected, called the tactical officer. Near miss, 30 meters off starboard bow. Evasive maneuvers, Chen ordered, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. Defensive systems online, but hold weapons in reserve. This could still be a misunderstanding. On the Harmony's bridge, the tactical officer reported with surprise. Captain, the vessel is executing evasive patterns. Their movements suggest formal military training. Zixel's skin darkened further. The AI was correct. Deploy the containment field. We cannot allow unknown hostiles to report our border positions. As the tractor beam reached out toward the human vessel, two civilizations poised on the precipice of a first contact that would reshape galactic history forever, beginning not with handshakes or shared knowledge, but with alarms and the glow of weapons powering up in the endless night. The Pathfinder spun on its axis, thrusters firing in precisely timed bursts as Commander Chen executed a maneuver that had only existed in simulation until now. The ship groaned under stresses it was never fully designed to withstand. Hull integrity at 87%, reported the tactical officer, his fingers flying across emergency reinforcement protocols. Whatever that beam is, it's trying to lock onto our molecular structure. Through the viewport, the alien vessel loomed impossibly large, its strange geometry seeming to bend the very starlight around it. The tractor technology manifested as a web of shimmering energy, reaching out with tendrils that probed and searched for purchase against the Pathfinder's hull. "They're hurting us," Chen realized, studying the tactical display. "These aren't random attacks. They're pushing us toward that larger vessel approaching from Sector 4. In the engine room, Raj Patel worked with desperate focus, sweat dripping onto the console before him. The ship's fusion drive was howling in protest, temperature gauges pushing into red zones that no Earth engineer had ever willingly approached. "I need more coolant to Section 3. He shouted to his assistant, who raced to reroute critical supplies. His mind raced through equations and possibilities, seeing connections between systems that even the ship's designers had never intended. The experimental shield emitters weren't designed to channel engine power, but theoretically. "Commander," he called through the ship's comm, "I think I can break their hold, but it's going to drain our main power reserves. We'll be running on auxiliaries for at least 4 minutes." Chen barely hesitated. "Do it. We need maneuverability more than life support right now." On the Harmony's command deck, Captain Zixel watched with growing concern as the primitive vessel continued to evade their standard containment procedures. "Impossible," muttered the tactical officer, his ridge scales flaring with agitation. "Their maneuvers don't conform to any known species flight patterns." The Council Eye's voice remained calm despite the escalating situation. "Recalibrating capture parameters, increasing tractor field intensity by 40%. A junior science officer monitoring the human vessel's power signatures suddenly looked up in alarm. "Captain, detecting unusual power redistribution within the target ship. They appear to be." His warning came too late. Aboard the Pathfinder, Engineer Patel executed his desperate gambit. With a series of commands, he redirected the superheated plasma from the fusion reactor's containment field, channeling it through the experimental shield matrix. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The energy pulse rippled outward in concentric rings of blue-white fury, disrupting the molecular cohesion of the tractor beam. The connection shattered, releasing the human vessel while sending a feedback surge through the Harmony's primary systems. Alarms wailed across the Council ship as control systems flickered and defensive arrays reset themselves. The bridge lighting dimmed momentarily as auxiliary power engaged. "Damage report," Captain Zixel demanded, rising from his command chair. "Primary tractor systems offline. Power fluctuations in defensive grids 1 through 17. Sensor arrays recalibrating," reported the systems officer, her voice betraying rare Valerian shock. "Captain, they shouldn't have been able to do that. Their technology is centuries behind our containment fields." The tactical officer added with growing concern, "The vessel is making another run, utilizing the momentary sensor gap to track them," Zixel ordered. "All available power to propulsion and targeting systems. The Council must be informed immediately." As the Pathfinder accelerated away, its engines straining and hull plates creaking under the stress, Commander Chen permitted herself a moment of grim satisfaction. "Setting course for the debris field in Sector 6, she announced. "Let's find somewhere to make repairs and figure out what we've stumbled into." Aboard the damaged Council vessel, the AI reached a conclusion that would send shockwaves throughout galactic civilization. Threat assessment updated. Species demonstrates unpredicted technological innovation and adaptive capacity. Priority classification now Alpha level. Alert all Council vessels. Within the asteroid field, the Pathfinder drifted between 2 massive space rocks, its external running lights dimmed to minimal levels. The outer hull bore scorch marks from the alien weapons near miss, and makeshift patches covered sections where structural integrity had been compromised. Inside the ship's cramped laboratory, Dr. Williams hunched over his workstation, surrounded by holographic projections of the alien transmissions. Dark circles had formed under his eyes after 36 hours without sleep, but excitement kept exhaustion at bay. "Commander, I've isolated repeating patterns in their communication bursts," he explained as Chen entered the lab. "They're using some form of crystalline quantum modulation. It's years beyond our technology, but the mathematical foundation is still recognizable." He highlighted a specific section of code that pulsed with rhythmic precision. "This segment repeats before each weapon's activation. I believe it's a warning or demand of some kind." Chen studied the pattern, brow furrowed. "Can we respond using similar protocols?" "Possibly. I've modified our communication array to approximate their frequency patterns. It won't be elegant, but it might be understood." The ship's tactical officer, Lieutenant Rivera, joined them, carrying a data tablet. "We have another problem, Commander. Long-range sensors are detecting increased activity. Multiple vessels converging on this sector from at least 7 vectors." He displayed the tactical overview, which showed energy signatures moving with purpose toward their position. "They're hunting us," Chen concluded grimly. Across the galaxy, the reverberations of the encounter escalated. On the crystalline spires of Tellurian Prime, the ancient archivists convened an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. Grand Archivist Ventel addressed the gathering, her translucent form shimmering with concern. "The data patterns are concerning. This species achieved their first primitive spaceflight less than 200 years ago, yet they have already developed interstellar capabilities and demonstrated resistance to standard containment protocols." A younger archivist interjected, "Perhaps the Ket Dominion warnings were justified. The emergence of another rapidly advancing species could destabilize the concordance." "We must not rush to judgment," countered Ven Telephone. "The archive contains 17 previous instances of species that advanced quickly but peacefully." Meanwhile, in the militarized space stations of the Ket Dominion, War Commander Zarek reviewed the intelligence with growing excitement. His carapace clicked rhythmically as he addressed his battle strategists. "The Council's embarrassment creates opportunity," he rumbled, mandibles flexing. "Their containment failure demonstrates weakness. If these humans possess technology that can disrupt Council systems, they could be valuable as either allies or study subjects." He gestured to the tactical display showing their fleet movements. "Dispatch stealth observers to monitor the Council's response. Prepare acquisition teams for possible deployment." Back aboard the Pathfinder, the senior staff gathered in the conference room. Engineer Patel had rigged a makeshift sensor scrambler to mask their position temporarily, but his expression revealed its limitations. "It's buying us time, but not much," he admitted. "Their scanning technology will eventually filter out our interference patterns." Dr. Williams activated a display showing his translation progress. "I believe I've decoded enough to attempt basic communication, primarily identification protocols and navigational requests." Commander Chen studied the faces of her crew, tired, stressed, but determined. The weight of humanity's future rested on their next decision. "If we retreat to Earth, we risk leading potentially hostile forces back to an unprepared planet," she reasoned. "If we stay and fight, we'll be overwhelmed. But if we establish communication—" She straightened, decision made. "We didn't come all this way to run at the first sign of trouble. Humanity deserves a proper introduction to the galaxy, not as fugitives or targets, but as equals." Lieutenant Rivera raised an eyebrow. "That's assuming they're interested in talking." "Everyone's interested in talking to someone who just did the impossible," Chen replied with a hint of a smile. "Dr. Williams, prepare your translation matrix. Engineer Patel, I need that fusion drive ready for one more miracle. It's time we formally introduced ourselves to the neighborhood." The Pathfinder's makeshift workshop had once been the ship's secondary cargo hold. Now it buzzed with frenetic activity as Engineer Patel directed his team in the implementation of his audacious plan. "Careful with that metallurgical compound," he cautioned as 2 engineers maneuvered a container of silvery liquid harvested from a rare Earth asteroid. "Its molecular structure is still stabilizing." The substance, which they'd nicknamed Stardust, possessed unusual properties that allowed it to absorb and redirect energy signatures. It had taken 3 dangerous EVA missions to collect enough for their purposes. Across the hold, Dr. Williams collaborated with the communications team, his translation matrix growing more sophisticated by the hour. The Council species communicate with quantum precision, he explained to Commander Chen as she observed their progress. They've evolved beyond the ambiguity that characterizes human languages. Each transmission contains exactly one intended meaning. A weakness we can exploit, Chen noted, watching the alien communication patterns pulse across the display. Williams nodded. Exactly. They struggle with our linguistic flexibility. Metaphors, multiple meanings, contextual shifts. Their translation algorithms seek patterns but can't accommodate our creative communication leaps. In the ship's gym-turned-tactical center, Lieutenant Rivera drilled crew members on a fighting style he'd developed specifically for zero-gravity environments. Conventional combat training assumes a consistent gravitational reference, he explained as 2 officers practiced disorienting spin maneuvers. But humans are uniquely adaptable to changing reference frames. We evolved climbing trees, swimming in oceans, building in 3 dimensions. Commander Chen moved between these various stations, coordinating efforts and providing guidance. The ship had become a laboratory of human ingenuity, each section working to leverage humanity's evolutionary advantages. Status report, she requested as the senior staff gathered for their hourly briefing. Paddle spoke first, displaying a holographic model of their modifications. We've successfully integrated the Stardust compound into our hull matrix. It won't exactly make us invisible, but it will confuse their targeting systems by presenting multiple ghost signatures. The translation system is operational, Williams added. It's imperfect, but should allow basic diplomatic exchanges. I've also included mathematical proofs as universal communication anchors. Lieutenant Rivera gestured toward the tactical display. The Council fleet has established a search pattern centered on these coordinates. They're thorough and methodical, but predictable. They haven't considered that we might deliberately move toward them rather than away. Chen studied the assembled data, noting the patterns and possibilities. Unlike the specialized Council species, humans had evolved as generalists, facing countless environmental challenges that forced them to adapt or perish. Earth's history was filled with examples of outnumbered, outgunned forces prevailing through unconventional approaches. The Council expects us to behave according to their tactical models, she observed, but those models assume rational actors operating within known parameters. They don't account for human unpredictability. She outlined her strategy, pointing to specific weaknesses in the Council's formation. They've optimized for efficiency, creating a search pattern that would be perfect against an enemy thinking like them. But we'll approach from this vector, using the system's star to mask our heat signature. The tactical officer raised an eyebrow. That'll put us dangerously close to the stellar radiation belt. Exactly, Chen replied with a grim smile. They won't expect any ship to willingly navigate that hazard. Engineer Patel, can our modified shields handle solar radiation at that proximity? Patel considered for a moment. Not indefinitely, but for the 17 minutes needed to traverse the approach corridor. Yes, Commander. It'll be uncomfortable, but survivable. Chen nodded, decision made. Prepare the ship. We move in 6 hours. Humanity doesn't hide in the shadows. We step into the light and introduce ourselves properly. As the meeting adjourned, Dr. Williams lingered behind. Commander, I've been analyzing the Council's biological data. Their specialized evolution has granted them remarkable capabilities, but at a cost. They've lost something we still possess. What's that, Doctor? Adaptability under pressure, he replied simply. The capacity to thrive in chaos. Admiral Grektha's exoskeleton gleamed under the command center's lighting as he studied the holographic representation of the asteroid field. His species, the Dravidi, had evolved as apex predators on a world of endless competition, making them natural military strategists for the Council. Maintain the search pattern, he ordered, his multifaceted eyes detecting patterns invisible to most species. Increase sensor sensitivity in Sector 7. The primitive vessel will attempt to use the debris density as cover. His second-in-command approach, mandibles clicking respectfully. Admiral, long-range scanners are reporting unusual radiation fluctuations near the stellar boundary. Possible instrument malfunction. Grektha dismissed the concern with a slashing motion of his armored forearm. Solar interference. The primitive vessel lacks the shielding technology to approach the stellar radiation belt. Focus on established escape vectors. Throughout the Council fleet, sophisticated AI systems calculated probabilities, projected flight paths, and analyzed billions of variables per second, all following the accumulated tactical wisdom of 10,000 years of galactic peacekeeping. Not one of these systems flagged the radiation anomaly as significant. Within that radiation belt, the Pathfinder shuddered as superheated particles bombarded its modified shields. The interior temperature had risen 15 degrees despite environmental controls operating at maximum capacity. Sweat beaded on Commander Chen's forehead as she monitored their approach vector. Hull temperature approaching critical limits, reported the engineering officer, her voice steady despite the danger. Shield matrix is holding, but the stardust compound is becoming increasingly unstable. Engineer Patel's voice came through the communication system, background noises revealing his presence in the engine room. We're venting excess heat through modified coolant systems. It's buying us time, but not much. Maintain course, Chen ordered, studying the tactical display showing the Council fleet's formation, a perfect deployment optimized for efficiency, and completely blind to their approach. We'll emerge from the radiation belt in 30 seconds, announced the navigation officer, ready to execute communication protocols on your mark. Dr. Williams stood by at the modified communication station, the translation matrix humming with power. Translation systems online. The message is ready for broadcast. The ship emerged from the radiation belt like a phoenix rising from flames, its hull glowing with residual heat as it accelerated directly toward the center of the Council formation. In the Council flagship, alarms suddenly blared as sensors registered the impossible. "Contact!" shouted the tactical officer, mandibles spread wide in shock. The primitive vessel has emerged from the stellar radiation belt. Admiral Grektha rose from his command chair, disbelief evident in his posture. Impossible. No species would risk such radiation exposure. Target and neutralize immediately. But before weapons could lock on, every communication system throughout the Council fleet simultaneously activated with the same message, transmitted on all frequencies using their own communication protocols. "Greetings from humanity," Dr. Williams' carefully crafted message began. Mathematical proofs establishing intelligence and peaceful intent embedded within the transmission architecture. "We extend friendship and apologize for our unintentional territorial violation. We request diplomatic dialogue to resolve this misunderstanding." On the Council command ship, Ambassador Ilara entered the bridge, her luminescent form casting rippling patterns of light. Unlike the militaristic Dravidi, her Luminite species had evolved as symbiotic empaths, giving her unique perspective on conflict resolution. "Admiral," she said, her melodic voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. "They approach without weapons active, broadcasting on diplomatic frequencies. This defies all tactical logic." Grektha's compound eyes narrowed. It could be a deception. Or, Ilara countered, moving to study the human vessel's approach pattern, it could be something we've never encountered before, a species that thinks in ways we cannot predict. Such contradiction demands investigation rather than destruction. The Admiral hesitated, millennia of Council protocol warring with the unprecedented situation before him. Finally, his mandibles clicked in reluctant agreement. "Maintain defensive positions but hold fire," he ordered. "Ambassador Ilara, prepare your diplomatic protocols. Let us hear what these humans have to say." The grand diplomatic chamber aboard the Council vessel Inevitable Consequence presented a stark contrast between species. 37 representatives from across the galaxy observed from behind protective fields, their diverse physiologies ranging from crystalline structures to gaseous entities contained within specialized suits. Only Ambassador Ilara stood directly before the human delegation, her bioluminescent form pulsing with gentle blue light that seemed to reflect her cautious optimism. "We acknowledge your communication attempts," she said, her words filtered through the translation matrix both sides now employed, "though your methods of approach violated numerous Council safety protocols." Commander Chen responded with a carefully measured tone. "We regret the unorthodox introduction, but our options were limited by the circumstances of our encounter." Dr. Williams activated a holographic display showing Earth and its solar system. "We come from the third planet of this G-type main sequence star. Our species has achieved spaceflight within the last 2 centuries of our development." The watching Council representatives murmured among themselves, data streaming between their various communication systems as they analyzed the implications. A reptilian delegate hissed with obvious skepticism. "Such rapid advancement is historically associated with aggressive expansion patterns," noted a Council scientific advisor, "or with species facing evolutionary pressure that rewards adaptability," countered Ambassador Ilara. The discussion continued with cautious exchanges of cultural and scientific information, the humans carefully demonstrating both their technological capabilities and peaceful intentions. Engineer Patel was explaining the principles behind their modified shield technology when the first alarm klaxons began to wail throughout the ship. "Containment breach in sectors 3 through 7, announced the ship's AI, its harmonious voice maintaining calm despite the urgent message. "Unknown toxin detected in the environmental systems." Security footage appeared on multiple displays throughout the chamber, showing mechanical failures in the life support systems. Council representatives retreated further behind their protective fields as the environmental alert level escalated. "Sabotage," Admiral Grektha's voice thundered over the communication system. "Security teams to all affected sectors." Ambassador Ilara's luminescence flickered as her species' natural atmospheric sensors detected the changing composition of the air. "Neural inhibitor compound," she identified, her voice growing strained. "Particularly effective against photosynthetic nervous systems like mine." The chamber's emergency containment fields activated, designed to isolate the diplomatic section from the rest of the ship, but the neurotoxin had already begun circulating. Several Council representatives collapsed as their specialized respiratory systems proved particularly vulnerable to the compound. Dr. Williams reacted instantly, scanning the airborne particles with his medical equipment. "It's a synthetic neurotoxin targeting specific metalloproteins common in non-Earth biology," he reported, already reconfiguring his medical scanner. Commander Chen moved to assist Ambassador Ilara, who had sunk to her knees, her luminescence dimming dangerously. "Doctor, priority on an atmospheric countermeasure." While security forces searched for the saboteurs, the humans demonstrated crisis response skills honed through centuries of Earth's unpredictable disasters. Dr. Williams repurposed his medical filters, identifying the compound and creating emergency filtration devices from equipment in his kit. "These won't neutralize the toxin completely," he explained as he handed specialized masks to the Council representatives within reach, "but they'll filter the worst of it until your systems can process the rest." Engineer Patel, meanwhile, had immediately recognized the environmental system architecture, not because he'd seen it before, but because human frontier colonies had taught him to quickly understand and adapt to unfamiliar technologies. He accessed an environmental control panel, his fingers flying across the alien interface with intuitive understanding. "The ventilation systems in this section appear to operate on parallel redundancies," he muttered, tracing conduit paths through the ship's schematics. "If I can reverse the extraction fans and reroute through the secondary purification array." Council security officers moved to stop him, but Admiral Grekta, monitoring from the bridge, countermanded their actions. "Let the human proceed," he ordered, recognizing that their specialized engineers were struggling with the cascading failures the sabotage had triggered. Their adaptability may be our best chance to contain this crisis. The Pathfinder dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, its modified hull bearing the marks of its journey. Commander Chen and the Council observation team stood on the bridge, gazing at the distant blue-white dot of humanity's homeworld displayed on the main view screen. "Home," Chen said softly, before the tactical alert chimed, shattering the moment. "Multiple vessels detected," reported Lieutenant Rivera, his expression darkening as sensor data populated his display. 17. No, 23 ships of unknown configuration forming a blockade around Earth's orbital approaches. The senior council observer, a tall crystalline entity named Veshtar, moved to examine the tactical display. "Opportunists from the galactic fringe," they noted, their voice resonating through their translucent form. "Scavengers seeking advantage before official council protection is established. They're blocking all approach vectors," Rivera confirmed, frustration evident in his voice. "And Earth has no defense systems capable of challenging ships of this class." The council observers conferred briefly in their native communication format, a complex exchange of crystalline resonances, before Veshtar addressed Commander Chen. "Standard council protocol dictates withdrawal to safe coordinates and await the arrival of a proper defensive fleet," they stated. "Your world would be placed under temporary quarantine protection." Chen studied the blockade pattern, noting the systematic coverage of all conventional approach vectors. Yet something about their formation triggered a memory from her academy studies of naval warfare on Earth. "How long before council reinforcements could arrive?" she asked. 3 standard cycles," Veshtar replied. "Approximately 72 of your hours." Chen shook her head. "Too long. Those ships could establish ground presence or orbital superiority by then." She turned to Engineer Patel. "What's our power situation?" Patel consulted his diagnostics. "Main systems at 67% capacity. The modified shield matrix is stable but untested against multiple hostile vessels. And our Stardust compound, depleted to 40% of original volume, but still integrated with our hull structure." Chen's eyes returned to the tactical display, focusing on the massive gas giant Jupiter and its complex gravitational field. "Lieutenant Rivera, what if we powered down all systems and used Jupiter's gravity as a slingshot maneuver?" Understanding dawned on Rivera's face. A dead drift followed by maximum acceleration at the apex of the curve. They wouldn't expect a ship to voluntarily surrender navigational control. "It would require precise timing," Patel cautioned. "And we'd need to bring all systems back online simultaneously at the exact moment of optimal trajectory." "Can you make it happen?" Chen asked simply. Patel exchanged glances with Rivera. "It's never been attempted with a vessel of this class. But yes, Commander, we can make it happen." Veshtar's crystalline structure pulsed with confusion. This approach contradicts all established tactical doctrines. The risk factor exceeds acceptable parameters by several orders of magnitude. "Welcome to how humans solve problems," Chen replied with a grim smile. "We specialize in the improbable." As the Pathfinder altered course toward Jupiter, the blockading ships adjusted their formation slightly, but maintained focus on conventional approach vectors to Earth. None of their tactical systems flagged the powered-down human vessel as it began its silent drift into the gas giant's gravitational influence. On the bridge, now illuminated only by emergency lighting, Commander Chen watched the chronometer counting down to the moment of truth. Earth's fate hung in the balance, dependent on a maneuver no spacecraft had ever attempted at these velocities. "All crews to acceleration stations," she ordered, strapping herself into the command chair. "Prepare for maximum G-force at my mark." "Engineer Patel, I need everything we've got when we hit the apex." From his position at the engineering station, Patel nodded, fingers poised over controls that would either save Earth or consign the Pathfinder to becoming another piece of space debris. 20 seconds to optimal position," Rivera announced, tension evident in his voice. Veshtar and the other council observers secured themselves according to human instructions, their species' expressions unreadable, but their attention fixed completely on the unfolding human strategy. 10 seconds. Came Rivera's count. 9. 8. Chen took one last look at the distant blue dot of Earth on the view screen. Let's introduce ourselves properly. Geneva basked in the warm glow of early summer, Lake Geneva's waters reflecting the crystalline structure of the Council diplomatic vessel hovering above the city like a magnificent sculpture of light and geometry. The newly constructed Interstellar Cooperation Center stood as a monument to how quickly humanity could adapt, designed and built in just under 6 months, incorporating both Earth architecture and alien engineering principles. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, representatives from Earth's nations sat alongside delegates from 24 galactic civilizations. The chamber buzzed with translation devices, environmental adaptation systems, and the excited murmurs of history in the making. Commander Sarah Chen, now wearing the formal uniform of the newly established Earth Diplomatic Service, stood at the observation window overlooking the lake. The events of the past 6 months still seemed surreal, from their desperate gambit using Jupiter's gravity well to break through the blockade, to the emergency broadcasts that had allowed Earth to prepare for first contact, to the arrival of the Council fleet that had dispersed the opportunistic fringe elements. "Contemplating your journey, Commander?" asked a familiar voice. Chen turned to find Ambassador Ilara approaching, her luminescent form now a familiar sight in diplomatic circles. The Luminite had become humanity's strongest advocate within the Council. Reflecting on how quickly things change, Chen replied. 6 months ago, we were designated as a hostile vessel. Now we're hosting the Council Assembly. Your species excels at rapid adaptation, Ilara noted, her light patterns shifting in what Chen had come to recognize as appreciation. What took most Council species centuries, Earth has accomplished in half a planetary rotation. The assembly hall's chimes sounded, calling attendees to their places for the ceremony. Chen took her position alongside Dr. Williams and Engineer Patel, who had both received special commendations for their actions during the first contact crisis. Admiral Grektha, now serving as the Council's Chief of Interspecies Security Coordination, stepped to the central platform. His imposing gravity form had once seemed threatening to the humans, but now commanded respect rather than fear. Honored representatives, his translated voice resonated through the chamber. We gather to formally recognize Earth's admission to the Galactic Council, the fastest integration in our 10,000-year history. Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the assembly as Grektha continued. The stars have witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall, each contributing unique strengths to our collective knowledge. Some species build wonders that endure for millennia. Others unravel the deepest scientific mysteries. He gestured toward the human delegation, with a respectful motion of his armored forelimb. Humanity brings something different yet equally valuable, the unmatched ability to adapt, to face the unknown, and not merely survive it, but incorporate it and thrive. The Admiral activated a holographic display at the center of the chamber. It showed the original alert message that had started their journey, preserved now in Council archives as a turning point in galactic history. Before the assembled delegates, the text transformed, symbols rearranging to form a new designation. Alert all systems. Humans have made their entrance. Classification: essential allies. As the formal ratification commenced, Chen exchanged glances with her crewmates. Dr. Williams smiled while Engineer Paddle gave a subtle nod of satisfaction. Beyond the ceremony, Chen knew challenges awaited. Some Council factions remained wary of humanity's rapid advancement. The Ket Dominion's sabotage attempt had revealed political complexities they were just beginning to navigate. Earth itself was transforming as it absorbed new technologies and ideas. Yet as she watched Earth formally join the galactic community, she felt profound certainty that humanity would find its place among the stars, not through conquest or dominance, but through their unique ability to adapt, innovate, and turn potential adversaries into allies. The Council had initially identified humans as hostile. Now they recognized what humanity had always known about itself, that its greatest strength wasn't weaponry or technology, but the incredible adaptability that had allowed a species from a single planet to make its indelible mark upon the stars.